Good morning. Welcome to the English portion of our radio show, Para Ser Legal, to be legal. We got a heck of a program for you. First, we're going to talk about, shouldn't be a surprise, Trump wants to deport you without allowing you to see an immigration judge. So we're going to talk specifically about what is expedited removal and what are the changes to expedited removal. Secondly, we're going to talk about what is voluntary departure. Should you do it? Should you not do it? What are the benefits in doing voluntary departure? Under what circumstances would you want to depart voluntarily? Third, we're going to talk about, hey, what to do if ICE officers show up at your house or at your place of work or in your car. So know your rights. You know, we're talking about that in the context of expedited removal. Because of the changes, there's going to be a much more aggressive posture from ICE. And lastly, we're going to talk about Jorge, who had his trial last week and he won. He's going to get his green card. He applied for cancellation of removal. We're going to explain what is that and how we proved George's case and how we could do it in cases like George.
Calificas para ser legal, quieres saber, solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.
I'm Andrés Mejer, and let's talk about expedited removal. So what is it? Expedited removal is a process that allows Department of Homeland Security, meaning immigration, to deport you without a hearing before an immigration judge or a review by the Board of Immigration Appeals. What does that mean? You don't see a judge, you could be gone in a day. So the following people are subject to expedited removal. It's anyone who arrives at a port of entry and is inadmissible because of one of three things. One, misrepresentation. Well, you lied. You came in, you're a Brazilian citizen, but you came in under a Portuguese passport that isn't yours. And you said, oh, well, because Portugal is a visa waiver country, I should be allowed to come in. And they discovered that you had lied and you're not actually Portuguese and that passport doesn't really belong to you. So they deport you. Accelerated deportation. Secondly, false claim of U.S. citizen. So the most common way that happens is you present a passport showing you're American citizen when you're not. That's the most common way, but it's not the only way. Or you don't have a valid entry document like a visa. Now, prior to September 1st, 2019, immigration had applied expedited removal only to those at a port of entry, meaning they came and they said, I'm afraid to go back. I want to stay. Let me give you an opportunity to explain. Or if they caught you within 2 weeks of entering the U.S. and within 100 miles of a land border. So how is expedited removal different from proceeding before an immigration judge? Well, let me explain to you. Under a judge, there's a complaint and they put you in a process of deportation. So the judge will hear your case. You have a right to an attorney. You can seek relief from deportation. And if the judge denies you, meaning they doesn't believe that you've proved the elements of your particular defense, you can appeal that decision. Whereas in an expedited removal context, you don't have any of those procedural protections. Instead, immigration, in this case DHS, acts like prosecutor and judge. You could be detained, arrested, and deported on the same day. You have no right to appeal, and at least one court has said you don't even have a right to an attorney. Big difference, expedited removal versus removal deportation for the immigration judge. Now, what if you get, we'll talk about an expedited order for the moment, but you're afraid to go back to your country? Well, so here's what happened. Before September 1st, 2019, you were caught within 100 miles of the border and within 2 weeks of entry, and they said they're going to give you an expedited order of removal. And you say, hold on a second, I'm afraid to go back. I fear persecution. That puts the brakes on it, at least temporarily. The immigration officer has to refer you to an asylum officer. They are not the same. An asylum officer has some different training and experience. So it's not the same thing as just an Customs Border Patrol agent. And that asylum officer is going to do what's called a credible fear interview. The asylum officer will make a determination if he finds there's significant possibility that you can establish a case for asylum that's protected under the law. Just because you're afraid to go back. Well, why are you afraid to go back? Well, you know what? I don't know how I'm going to find a job to support my family. That isn't sufficient under asylum law. Now, I was a police officer, and in Colombia, I worked against the drug traffickers, and they came to my house, they put a gun to my wife and kids and to myself, and said, if I don't leave, they'll kill me. It's a case that we can prove. And that would be, as long as I'm not making it up, right? The officer finds a significant possibility under the law that if everything I say is true, I could win an asylum claim. So if the officer finds in my favor, I am out of the expedited removal process. I will get a notice to appear, which is a complaint starting the deportation process, and I will have my day in court in front of an immigration judge. Now, and that judge will either agree with me and grant me asylum or some kind of relief, or deny me. If they deny me, I can appeal. Now, if the officer denies me, the asylum officer says, you know what? I'm not buying it. That decision goes in front of the judge, and the judge will say, you know, the officer got it right, and I'm expedited removal. The officer got it wrong. Now there's a demand that's going to be issued, and I'm going to have my day in court. So what is Trump changing about expedited removal? Well, he's not changing those three grounds of who would qualify, meaning misrepresentation, false claim to U.S. citizenship, or somebody here without a visa or some legal means to entry. No, what he's doing is he's changing the location, the geography, and the timing. So instead of 2 weeks of entry and 100 miles, it's now going to be 2 years from entry and anywhere in the country. Anywhere. So we're not talking about just border towns like Florida or New Mexico, Arizona, New York, North Dakota. No, we're talking about Ohio, New Jersey, Delaware, South Carolina, anywhere in the country that ICE finds you, and within 2 years of your legal entry, you could be deported in the same day without seeing a judge. I don't believe that the courts will abide by that. It's, in my view, a deprivation of your due process rights. What if you've been here more than 2 years? Well, how do you prove it? Other than you saying so. You can carry on you personal documents like school records, medical records, info on work, tax returns, church documents, bank statements, credit card bills, birth certificates of children, tax returns that you filed, anything that shows you were here, anything with a date, receipts that you've been here more than 2 years. In almost every process that we have to gain an immigration benefit, when you're in the US, you have to prove you've been here for a certain period of time. So these documents are not unusual. Now the question is, should you carry that information on you? My opinion, you shouldn't, but you should have it in a safe place, collected, where you can get your hands on it fast. So I would suggest meeting with an attorney to put those documents together. You should have 2 copies, one with your attorney and one personally. You put it in a folder. You just put it in a place that's accessible. You know where it is. So if you have a problem, you ask your parent, your spouse, your child, your neighbor, here's where it is. Please bring it to me because I'm detained. I can't go get it. Should you carry it? Look, I suggest having the documentation. I'm not suggesting carrying it with you. Why? Even if the documents themselves don't prove that you're undocumented, the fact that you carry them can be an inadvertent admission. Now, proof of employment could be used against those employers who are giving you a job without permission. They could have consequences. If you carry original documents, what happens if you lose them? Passport, birth certificates. Some of that stuff is hard to come by. If you have any questions, put them down below. Subscribe to our channel. If there's a subject you want us to talk about in the future, put it in the comments. We review it, and maybe we'll talk about it in the weeks to come.